Hi dear students, welcome to Sri Jendra Rank Zone classes and I am Amit Ajmani and this is the lecture number 1 of the first chapter of chemistry, that is matter around us pure? Now we already know what exactly matter is. Now what is matter? Anything which occupies space and has mass is called matter. And we know that all the substances around us which we classify as matter consists of or made up of particles. Now the particles of matter have a few characteristics. Let us see what are these characteristics of particles of matter. The particles of matter are very small, and these particles have spaces between them. These particles are constantly moving, and the particles of matter attract each other. So these are the four characteristics of particles of matter. They are very small, they have spaces between them, they are constantly moving, and they attract each other. Out of these, this particular characteristic, that they are constantly moving, here we have one more additional topic to study, that is Brownian motion. Now we know what is Brownian motion. It is the continuous motion, the zigzag motion of the particles of matter. We have seen the pollen grains, they move in a zigzag fashion as if they are dancing on the surface of water. Now, why exactly it happens? Because the particles of water are constantly moving. The particles of water, I am saying, they are constantly moving, so they hit the pollen grains, because of which we see that zigzag motion. Another observation is whenever there is sunlight coming from any particular hole or crack into a room, then we see that the dust particles are constantly moving. Once again, why is it so? Because the air particles are constantly in motion, which hit these dust particles. That is why we find them always moving. Fine. You need to remember what is Brownian motion. Now, when we classify matter, we classify it based on its physical state. And we know that there are three categories of matter, that we classify them into solids, liquids, and gases. We need to study and know a few properties of solids, liquids, and gases, on the basis of which they can be differentiated. We all know these, just trying to brush up the things. First of all, talking about the properties of solids, we know that solids have a fixed shape and a fixed volume. They cannot be compressed much. They have high densities. They are heavy. They do not fill their container completely, and they do not flow. Now, why all these properties are there in solids? It is only because of one basic reason, that the particles of solids are tightly or closely packed with each other. Now, because they are so closely packed, that is why they have got a fixed shape, they have got a fixed volume. Because they are so closely packed, there are very less interparticular spaces, because of which they cannot be compressed much. Because they are so tightly packed, that is why they have high densities, they are heavy, because more particles can be accommodated in less space. And because of their fixed shape, they do not fill their container completely, and they do not flow. Reason is, again, the particles are tightly packed, so they bind each other with a strong force of attraction, right? So all the properties of solids are only because of one particular reason, that the particles are very closely packed. Now, when we talk about the liquids, let us try to relate the properties of liquids. They have a fixed volume, but they do not have fixed shape. They take the shape of the vessel in which they are placed. Like solids, they also cannot be compressed much. They have moderate to high densities. Usually the density is quite less as compared to solids. They also do not fill their container completely, and they generally flow easily. And all these properties are based on the fact that the particles of liquids are loosely packed. They have spaces between them. Now, when we talk about the properties of gases, gases have neither a fixed shape nor a fixed volume. They just acquire the shape and volume of the vessel in which they are kept. They can be compressed very easily into a small volume because they have large interparticle spaces between them. They have very low densities, that is, they are very light. They fill their container completely because the particles are so loosely packed, they are so far apart that there is negligible force of attraction binding these particles. That is why they flow easily and they fill the container completely. So talking about the properties of solid, liquids and gases, we can differentiate solids, liquids and gases on the basis of these properties, and the main difference lies in the arrangement of their particles. In solids, the particles are very tightly packed. In liquids, they are comparatively loosely packed, and in gases, they are very loosely packed. Okay, so these were the three states of matter. Nowadays, if you are aware, we have got two more states also: plasma and Bose-Einstein condensate. But still, we don't have exact idea about these states. So normally we'll be talking about solid, liquids and gases only. Now this was the classification based on the physical properties, the state. Let us now classify matter as per its chemical constitution. Based on the chemical constitution, the matter is classified into two subcategories. One are pure substances and another are impure substances. Now, what are these pure and impure substances? Let us try to relate them one by one in detail. First of all, talking about the pure substances. What is a pure substance? It is the one which is made up of only one kind of particles. These particles may be atoms or molecules, based on which they are further classified into elements and compounds. So pure substances are further grouped or classified in elements and compounds. All the elements, all the compounds are pure substances. Why? Because they contain only one kind of particles. Now, when we talk about a pure substance is homogeneous throughout its mass, and a pure substance cannot be separated into other kinds of matter by any kind of physical process. All the pure substances, they have a fixed composition as well as fixed melting point and fixed boiling points. Correct? So these are a few features of pure substances. Now talking about impure substances, they are also known as mixtures. Right? Now, what exactly are mixtures or what exactly are impure substances? A mixture contains two or more pure substances mixed together. It may be a homogeneous mixing or a heterogeneous. And a mixture can be separated into other kinds of matter by physical processes. A mixture does not have a fixed composition or a fixed melting point or a fixed boiling point. So based on these, we just came to the conclusion that matter can be categorized into pure substances and impure substances or mixtures. Pure substances, only one substance is present, no impurities are there. Whereas in mixtures, more than one substance is present. These pure substances are further classified as elements and compounds. Elements which cannot be divided into simpler substances, and compounds which are made from elements chemically bonded together. And the mixtures are further classified into homogeneous mixtures and heterogeneous. Now, what are these homogeneous and heterogeneous? Homogeneous are the substances which are completely mixed and they exist in one state or one phase, whereas heterogeneous mixtures, they are separate substances, one state or one phase spread throughout the other. These homogeneous mixtures, we know they are also known as solutions, and heterogeneous are also known as they are categorized as suspensions and colloids. We will study each one of them in detail. Okay, so this is the classification of matter based on their chemical composition. Now we need to study all these in detail one by one. First of all, starting up with the pure substances, elements. An element is a substance which is made up of only one kind of atoms, and that is why it cannot be split up in two or more simpler substances by the usual chemical methods of applying heat or light or electrical energy. And because they are made up of only one kind of atoms, all the atoms of the element are identical. But when we talk about different elements, then the atoms of different elements will differ in size and composition. Now, these elements may be solids or liquids or gases at room temperature. Majority of the elements are solid. 11 elements are in the gaseous state, right? Like oxygen gas or hydrogen gas or neon or argon, right? And only two elements, that is mercury and bromine, are liquids at room temperature. As per what we have already found out, we have got 118 elements. We are till now aware of 118 elements, and out of these 118, 92 elements occur in nature. The rest of the 26 elements are man-made. Fine. In few books it is written 115, in few it is written 116, but today we know that there are 118 elements existing. Okay, and these elements are further subdivided into metals, non-metals, and metalloids. You have already studied about metals and non-metals and metalloids in lower classes, and we will be studying it in a altogether different chapter later in your book, that is metals and non-metals. So right now, just focusing on the elements only. Next type of pure substances we said are the compounds. Now, what exactly are compounds? A compound is a substance which is made up of two or more elements chemically combined in a fixed proportion by mass. So all these words are quite important in the definition of compounds. Number one, it is made up of two or more elements. It's not a single element, two or more elements. And these two or more elements are chemically combined together, not physically. And whenever they are combining, their proportion by mass is fixed. For example, if we take water, We know the formula for water is H2O. It is a compound and it is made up of two elements like we can see in the formula, hydrogen and oxygen, and importantly it is chemically combined in a fixed proportion of 1 is to 8 by mass. Now if you take water whether from Tamil Nadu or from Delhi or from Jammu and Kashmir, whether you take it from America or Australia, everywhere and anywhere throughout the world, the composition of water is fixed. That is 1 is to 8 by mass. Clear? Now these compounds are further divided into three classes: acids, bases and salts on the basis of their properties. Again, this is our chapter that we'll be studying later in lot much detail. So this is a basic review about compounds. Now let us talk about mixtures. Now what are mixtures? Mixtures are also consisting of two or more elements or compounds, but they are not chemically combined together. So that is one of the major differences between mixtures and compounds. Mixtures also have two or more elements. Compounds also have two or more elements or compounds mixed together. But the difference is mixture, it is just a normal physical mixing. Whereas for making compounds, they are chemically combined with each other. Right? The best example of mixture is air, which is a mixture of many gases like oxygen, nitrogen, argon, carbon dioxide, water vapors. So they are all the gases which are present in our atmosphere. So air is a mixture. All the solutions that we come across are also mixtures. Fine. The various substances which are present in a mixture are known as the constituents or the components of the mixture. Clear? Now let us see a few points of differences between mixtures and compounds. There are quite many differences between them. Number one, a mixture can be separated into its constituent by the physical processes like filtration or evaporation or sublimation or distillation or with the help of a magnet. But you cannot separate a compound into its constituents by these physical processes. They can be done, but we require certain chemical processes for them. Second point of difference between mixtures and compounds is that a mixture shows the properties of its constituents. But when the constituents are chemically combined to form a compound, then the properties of compound are entirely different from those of its constituents. Taking same example of water. Now water is made up of hydrogen and oxygen. Both of them are gases, but water is in the liquid form. Hydrogen is highly combustible. It catches fire very easily. And oxygen is a supporter of combustion. So both of them will burn, but we cannot burn water. Right? So the properties of this water, which is a compound now, they are entirely different from that of hydrogen as well as oxygen. Clear? Let us see the next point of difference between mixtures and compounds. When we are making mixtures, energy in the form of heat or light is usually neither given out nor absorbed in the preparation of a mixture. But when we are making a compound, in that case, energy in the form of heat or light is usually either given out or absorbed during the preparation of a compound. Okay. Now the mixtures, when we are forming the mixtures, the composition of a mixture is variable. You can mix 2 or 3 or 4 any substances in any variable composition. they can be present in any proportion by mass. But when we talk about the composition of compounds, they are fixed. The constituents are present in a fixed proportion by mass which never changes. A mixture does not have a definite formula because there is no actual proper accurate composition of a mixture, but a compound always has a definite formula. Mixture does not have a fixed melting point or boiling point, whereas a compound has a fixed melting point and a fixed boiling point. So these are a few differences we need to remember between mixtures and compounds. Okay. Now talking about the different types of mixtures. Above we just studied that there are two types of mixtures. One are the homogeneous mixtures and the another one are heterogeneous mixtures. So let us go through them one by one. What are homo? Homo means same. So those mixtures in which the substances are completely mixed together and are indistinguishable from one another. There is no separate visible physical boundaries. After the constituents have been added or mixed, there are no visible boundaries. You cannot separately see them with your naked eye. Then in that case, that mixture is called to be homogeneous mixture. And a homogeneous mixture has a uniform composition throughout its mass. And as I already said, it doesn't have any physical boundaries of separation between the various constituents. All the homogeneous mixtures, they are termed as solutions or true solutions. For example, the sugar solution. When we mix sugar with water, now a homogeneous mixture is formed. Number one, after mixing, we cannot see water and sugar separately. Number two, this mixture can be formed by adding 2 spoons of sugar in water or 4 spoons of sugar in water or 1 spoon of sugar in water. So the composition is variable. Similarly, salt solution or copper sulfate solution or seawater or alcohol and water mixture, they are all examples of homogeneous mixtures. Okay. Now next talking about heterogeneous mixtures. Hetero means different. So those mixtures in which the substances remain separate and one substance is spread throughout the other substance as small particles, droplets or bubbles. These type of mixtures are called heterogeneous mixtures. Now these heterogeneous mixtures, they do not have a uniform composition throughout its mass and there is a visible boundary of separation between the various constituents, right? For example, all the suspensions and colloids are heterogeneous mixtures. Let us take a few examples. For example, if we mix sugar and sand, that mixture we can see sand differently and sugar particles separately. That is a heterogeneous mixture. Similarly, salt and sand mixture, polluted air, milk, petroleum, blood, these are all heterogeneous. Fine. So these are the heterogeneous mixtures. Now let us talk about these three terms that we encountered above in mixtures. What are solutions, what are suspensions, and what are colloids? Let us try to relate them one by one. Solutions. Now solutions are the homogeneous mixtures of two or more non-reacting substances. Examples we have already seen: the case of salt solution, sugar solution, vinegar, right? Metal alloys such as brass, air, these are all homogeneous mixtures. Now the salt solution and sugar solution, they are also known as true solutions. Why? Because in these solutions the particles of salt and sugar are mixed so well with water that we cannot distinguish one from the another, right? These two solutions are also known as molecular solutions. Why? Because the size of dissolved particles in such solutions is the same as that of a molecule. Now, when we make a solution, then the solution is made up of two things. One is solute particles and one is solvent particles. The substance which is dissolved to make a solution is called solute, and the substance in which the solute is dissolved is known as solvent. How do we know? So usually we differentiate between these two on the basis of their quantity. The substance which is present in lesser amount in a solution, it is considered the solute, and the substance which is present in a greater amount in a solution is termed as the solvent. Now these solute particles, they are also called dispersed particles, and the solvent particles are also called dispersion medium, right? And when we make a particular mixture by adding these two, they are always homogeneous mixtures, correct? Now when we are making a solution by dissolving any particular solute in water, then such solutions are given a different name. They are termed as aqueous solutions. So what are aqueous solutions? These are the solutions formed when the solvent is water and you are taking any other particular solute, but the solvent is water. And if the solutions are made by dissolving solutes in the other organic liquids, right, not water, you are taking any organic liquid, then such solutions are called non-aqueous solutions. Clear? So this is about our true solutions. When we talk about a true solution, there are certain properties of true solution. Number one, as we have already discussed, a solution is a homogeneous mixture. Now, the most important differentiation, the cause for all the properties of solution is this. And what is it? The size of solute particles. In a solution, the size of solute particles is extremely small. It is less than 1 nanometer in diameter. We know that 1 nanometer is equal to 10 to the power minus 9 meters. So this is extremely small. And since that the size is extremely small, that is why the particles of a solution, they go into the gaps present in the solvent, and that is why they cannot be seen even with a microscope. They are so small that they can easily pass through the filter paper. So you cannot actually separate a solution using this technique of filtration. These particles of solution are very stable. They do not separate out on keeping, and the particle size is so small that they cannot scatter light. So a true solution does not scatter light because the particle size is very small, right? So these are the properties of solution. Now these solutions can be made with any state of matter. Like we can make a solution of solid in a solid. All the metal alloys, they are solutions of solids in solids. For example, if we talk about brass, it is a solution of zinc in copper. We can also make a solution of solid in a liquid. These are the most common types of solutions. We have already discussed the sugar solution, salt solutions, in which sugar is solid, salt is solid substance, and they are dissolved in water. right? Quite importantly, you need to know that the solution of iodine in alcohol is called tincture of iodine, and this is also solid in a liquid type of solution. Next type of solutions can be made when a liquid is dissolved in another liquid. For example, vinegar. What exactly is vinegar? It is a solution of acetic acid, which is also known as ethanoic acid, in water. Solutions can be made by dissolving gases in a liquid. All the soda waters and the cold drinks that we drink, the fizziness, why it comes? Because of the carbon dioxide gas which is dissolved in water. Gas in a gas. Most common, the air that surrounds us. That is a mixture of solution of gases like oxygen, argon, carbon dioxide, water vapors. They are present in nitrogen gas. Nitrogen is the solvent. Quite strange, but it is a fact that even our air is a kind of solution. Here, the nitrogen is present in large quantity, so it is the solvent in air, and all other gases are present in small quantities. That is why they are the solutes. Clear? So these are a few types of solutions made. Now talking about suspensions. What exactly are suspensions? They are the heterogeneous mixtures in which the small particles of a solid are spread throughout a liquid without dissolving in it. They are known as suspensions. For example, chalk water mixture or muddy water or milk of magnesia or sand particles suspended in water. They are all examples of suspensions. Now talking about the properties of suspensions. A suspension is a heterogeneous mixture as we have seen, and important thing is the size of the solute particles. The size of the solute particles in any suspension is quite large. It is larger than 100 nanometers in diameter, and that is the main reason that why the particles of a suspension can be seen easily even with the naked eyes. Right? Fine. Now you cannot actually pass these particles of suspension through filter paper, so they can be easily separated out by the process of filtration. They can be separated out, and the particles, the suspensions are unstable. The particles of a suspension will settle down after some time if you keep it, and the particles are so big that is why they scatter a beam of light which passes through them because of the large size of its solute particles. So these are a few properties of suspensions. Now we'll discuss about colloids. Now what are colloids? Colloid is a kind of solution in which the size of solute particles is intermediate between those in true solutions and those in suspensions. Here, the size of the particle is not as small as that of the solutions, and they are not as big as in the case of suspensions. They are intermediate. So the particle size is bigger than that of a true solution but much smaller than that of a suspension. Examples of colloids are soap solution or starch solution or milk, ink, blood, jelly, and all the solutions of synthetic detergents. They are all colloids. Like solutions and suspensions, let us understand the properties of colloids. The colloids or a colloidal solution appears to be homogeneous. When we see the ink, when we see blood, we cannot see RBCs and WBCs with the naked eyes. We cannot see the black or blue colored pigments in the ink with naked eyes. So they will appear to be homogeneous, but actually colloids are heterogeneous. The size of the particles is, as told earlier, bigger than that of in true solution, but smaller as compared to the particle size in suspensions. It ranges between 1 nanometer and 100 nanometer in diameter. The particles of most of the colloids, they cannot be seen even with the microscope, but we can see the fat molecules of milk or the blood, composition of blood under microscope. The particles of a colloid can pass through a filter paper, so even they cannot be separated out by filtration. And the colloidal solutions are quite stable. They will not separate out if we keep them. And quite importantly is, a colloidal particle scatters a beam of light passing through it, because the size of the particles is fairly large. It is large enough to scatter beam of light. And this scattering of light by colloidal particles is known as Tyndall effect. In fact, this property of scattering of light makes it very easy to be differentiated from the true solutions. We can differentiate, we can distinguish a true solution from a colloidal solution by this fact only, that a true solution does not scatter a beam of light passing through it. But a colloidal solution, of course, will scatter a beam of light and it renders its path visible. So, a true solution does not show Tyndall effect. This scattering of light by colloidal particles is termed as Tyndall effect, which is not shown by true solutions, but colloidal solutions, they show Tyndall effect. Okay, so this is about our the solutions, suspensions, and the colloids. All the points are given in such a way that you can actually, in a tabular format, differentiate between the solutions, suspensions, and colloids. Okay, now a solution is made with two things, solute and solvent. How much solute is present in a particular quantity of a solution, this is called concentration of a solution. Now, what exactly is concentration? Concentration of a solution is the amount of solute present in a given quantity of the solution. How much solute is present in how much solvent, that is termed as the concentration of a solution, and it is always expressed in percentage. And the formula to calculate concentration of a solution is quite simple. This is mass of solute divided by mass of solution multiplied by 100. Now, what exactly we have said is, the concentration of a solution is equal to mass of solute divided by mass of solution, right? Multiply by 100. Now, quite importantly, we know that solutions are made up of solute plus solvent. So rather than taking mass of solution, we can also take the mass of solution equal to the sum of mass of solute as well as the mass of solvent. This is concentration of a solution, right? Now let us talk about saturated and unsaturated solutions. What are these type of solutions? A solution in which more quantity of solute can be dissolved without raising its temperature, that is termed as unsaturated solution, right? So what does it mean? It means that an unsaturated solution contains lesser amount of solute then what possibly the maximum amount of solute could have been used at that particular temperature? So these kind of solutions are called unsaturated solutions. And the solutions which have the maximum amount of solute dissolved in them at a particular temperature, they are known as saturated. And because they contain the maximum possible amount of solute which can be dissolved in it at that temperature, we cannot add any more solute. No more solute can be dissolved in that solution at that particular temperature. So these are our saturated and unsaturated solutions. Now, if a saturated solution is heated, then in that case it becomes unsaturated. Why? Because with the increase in temperature, more amount of solute will now be able to be added. And if a saturated solution is cooled, now we are doing the opposite of it, then the solubility of the solute will decrease, and that is why it will come out of the solution and it will appear on the surface. Such solutions are called supersaturated solutions. So what are supersaturated solutions? These are the solutions which are formed when supersaturated solutions, these are formed when we are cooling a saturated solution, due to which what happens, that the solubility of the solute is going to decrease and the solute is going to come out of the solution appearing on the surface. Such solutions are called supersaturated solutions. Correct? Now, quite important is solubility. What is solubility? The maximum amount of a solute which can be dissolved in 100 grams of a solvent. We take any particular solvent, whether it is water or any organic compound. If we are taking 100 grams of any particular solvent, then the maximum amount of solute which can be possibly dissolved in this 100 grams of solute at a specified temperature, that is known as the solubility of that solute in that solvent at that particular temperature. Because we have just studied that the solubility, it is affected with the increase or decrease in temperature. Now this solubility is always stated as mass of solute per 100 grams of water or any other solvent. Now if we say that the solubility of potassium nitrate in water is 32 grams at 20 degrees Celsius, what does it mean? It means that a maximum of 32 grams of potassium nitrate can be dissolved in 100 grams of water at 20 degree. Again I repeat, if we raise the temperature 20 to 30, more amount will be added now. Instead of 32, more amount will be added. And if we decrease the temperature from 20 to 16 or 14, then this 32 will not be able to be dissolved. It will be a lesser amount of solute. Maybe it is 25, 26, 27, whatever, but it will be less than 32 grams. Similarly, if we say that the solubility of sodium chloride, which is our common salt, in water is 36 grams at 20 degrees Celsius, it means that 36 grams of sodium chloride can be dissolved in 100 grams of water at 20 degrees Celsius. Correct? Now, this temperature, mentioning the temperature is quite important, because as I already told you, solubility depends on temperature. Whenever and wherever you are expressing the solubility of a substance, we need to specify the temperature also. Without temperature, writing solubility Doesn't make any sense. Okay. Now, the types of changes around us. Two types of changes we see around us. One are the physical changes and another are the chemical changes. What are these? A physical change is one in which some of the physical properties, color, state, etc. of the substance undergoing a particular change, they are altered temporarily. But there is no change in the actual composition and mass. There are no new substances being produced. Such changes are called physical changes. And the moment the carve of change is withdrawn, the substance is restored to its original state. For example, evaporation of water. Water, when heated, evaporates and gets converted into water vapors. But again, those water vapors will be converted again into water when cooled. Similarly, dissolution of salt in water. They are the examples of physical changes. Okay. There is no new substance getting formed. But if a new substance is getting formed, those changes are called as chemical changes. So chemical change is one in which the substance undergoing change are transformed into new substances. And because we are using the word new substances, the chemical properties of these new substances are quite different from the original substance. For example, burning of coal, souring of milk, digestion of food in our body, rusting of iron. So these are all examples of chemical changes. These chemical changes are irreversible. That means if some chemical change has taken place, a new substance has been obtained, it cannot be changed back to the original substance. Once you burn the coal, you cannot get it back. Once the milk has been sour, it cannot be converted into normalized. Once the food that we have eaten gets digested in our body, we cannot just bring that food again in the mouth in the form in which we have eaten it. Once the iron undergoes rusting, it cannot be revived back. Correct? So based on these points, let us try to relate what are the differences between physical and chemical changes. In a physical change, no new substance is formed, whereas in a chemical change, a new substance is formed in a chemical change. Physical changes are temporary changes, right? Whereas chemical changes are permanent changes. Physical change is easily reversible, but this is not with the case of chemical changes. They are usually irreversible. Now, when we are talking about physical change, to bring about a physical change, we do not require much energy. And even if we require energy, it is in very less quantity. So, very little heat or light energy is usually absorbed or given out in a physical change. Whereas in any chemical change, a lot of energy, whether it is in the form of heat or light, a lot of energy is either absorbed or given out in a chemical change. Now, in a physical change, the mass of a substance does not alter in this particular physical change. Whereas in a chemical change, the mass of a substance does alter, does change. So these are about the physical and chemical changes. I think we have covered a lot of topic. So we should end up here only so that you are able to relate and go through these points also. And before ending up our session, let me try to brush up all the topics that we discussed today. We talked about matter, started up with it. Then we talked about the properties of matter. Let me come to the top screen. We talked about matter. we talked about the characteristics of matter. I'm just reading the headings in order to brush up the things. I'm not telling the details which we have already discussed quite at length. Okay. Classification based on physical state, that is solid, liquid, gas. We studied about the properties of solids, the properties of liquids, and the properties of gases. Then we separated matter based on the chemical constitution. We talked about pure and impure substances. Pure substances are further categorized into elements and compounds, and impure are categorized into mixtures. So we studied about elements, compounds, and mixtures. This is the normal bifurcation of matter: pure substances and mixtures. Pure further into elements and compounds, and mixtures further into homogeneous and heterogeneous, which are further into solution, suspension, and colloids. We started up with elements, then we discussed about the compounds, then we discussed about the mixtures. We differentiated between mixtures and compounds. Then we discussed in detail about the types of mixtures, homogeneous and heterogeneous mixtures. We differentiated between the two. We took a lot many examples trying to understand what they are. And then we studied about solutions, suspensions, and colloids, the property of solutions, suspensions, and colloids. All the properties which we studied are basically kind of differentiation between these. So these are the properties of solution. We took examples of so many types of solution: solid in solid, solid in liquid, liquid in liquid, gas in liquid, etc., etc., gas in gas also. Then we discussed about the properties of suspension. We discussed about the properties of compounds, in which quite importantly we need to remember the scattering, that is Tyndall effect. Fine. Then after that we discussed about the saturated and unsaturated solutions. We also discussed about solubility. Fine. What exactly solubility is. And then last but not the least, we saw a few physical and chemical changes and the differences between them. So we'll be just taking up this session till here only. Go through all the topics that we have discussed today, and in the next session we'll continue up with the remaining part of this chapter. We'll end it up. Till then, enjoy yourself, of course, with Is Matter Around Us Pure chapter and its contents, and take care of yourself. Thank you so much for bearing up. We'll meet soon in the next session. Till then, have a great time.